All right, we're ready to go. I'll call the meeting of the Board of Education to order. We're having a special meeting this evening. I want to announce. We good? Yep. Okay. I'm going to announce early that because it is a special meeting, we are not having public comment. There will be public comment at the regular board meeting, and we'd love to hear from y'all. You want to hang out with us a couple weeks in a row. All right. Our first action item is recommended that the salary schedule for the groups identified, EAs, clerical, food services, security assistants, be adjusted to reflect a total increase of $5 an hour in accordance with the documents prepared for this meeting. I'm going to turn it over to our administration for our presentation, and then we will open it up for discussion.
Okay, we're going to have our CFO do our first presentation proposal. Mr. Ross, what's yours?
Sure. Did you want me to put the slides up, Dr. Jenkins? Just clarifying.
Yes, please.
Okay.
One second, I got kicked out. Okay. Mr. McPherson, we're going to start here with our presentation tonight. First of all, thank you to the board. Thank you to our community and thank you to all the staff. Mr. McPherson, myself and others have been working diligently to fulfill the request of the board to come back with a recommendation that we feel is appropriate for our staff. At this time, the various groups that were just read off by our board chair. So we have prepared a PowerPoint presentation here to accompany my recommendation memo to the board. So here we're going to have Mr. walk through the PowerPoint presentation, and then I'm going to give the recommendation at the appropriate time to the board. You're muted, Mr. McPherson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you wanted me to start. Yes, good evening, everybody. So tonight we do need to talk about and kind of recoup some of the things we discussed in the past. Of course, we start every meeting with our main three goals: that every child is on track to graduate ready for college, career, and community. The district and every school in it is a place where children, staff, and families thrive, and African-American children and youth excel in school. In our budget timeline, we are nearing the end. I'm currently in production of our October budget information for us to talk about an operations work group in October. And we're still waiting on some final numbers from the state, but I'll be bringing that to everyone next month. This evening, though, we are going to be talking more specifically around the hourly wage discussion that we've had over the last year. On August 8th and at the special board meeting on August 22nd, we discussed a use of reserved $1.4 million funding source to address hourly schedules in the 22-23 budget. As you may recall, we did take action after the 22nd special meeting to adjust the EA group up by $2 an hour, and the proposed adjustment and approved on August 29th. Sorry. During the 29th meeting, the superintendent recommendation was to use fund balance on a one-time basis to support an increase in wages for hourly staff. We do have additional resources from the governor to assist with some of the path to how we use the 1.4 that we discussed at those meetings. But we do recognize that we have further to go, especially in terms of valuing staff and finding a path forward to address some of the hourly wage concerns we've been discussing. During the 22nd board meeting, the superintendent brought a recommendation about using that 1.4 and was approved. There was a request at that same meeting to provide additional recommendation for developing a path for increasing pay to hourly staff up to an additional $5 an hour. Thus, our team respectfully requested a meeting today, September 19th, to discuss a recommendation which was developed for today. This is a subset of a chart that we've had in previous memos and presentation information, indicating that with the $1.4 million in play that we discussed again at recent meetings, that the action to go to $5 an hour would create a roughly a structural deficit in the current year budget of $7 million. For the next path forward, though, we recognize that the $7 million would be a one-time use of fund balance for the 22-23 budget will require an additional action on the administration to do some strategic budgetary realignment. So beginning after this action, assuming we take that tonight, we are going to be looking for ways in the 23-24 budget development process to identify some of the following ideas. One critical area of the strategic budgetary realignment process will be repurposing or elimination of vacant positions. The estimated fiscal impact, at least at this time, is that 100 positions would garner about $8.8 million. And that since we have over 4,000 positions, 100 position only represents about 2.5% of our workforce. In addition to repurposing or eliminating vacant positions, this process will continue to evolve our line item review of spending patterns of all departments and schools using a 3-year data trend. This review, which began the fall of 2022, will not impact the 22-23 budget development or final approval, but it does have the intent of taking the long view and ensuring our budgetary process is structurally sound. This process will allow us to invest our resources closest to the classroom and as we move forward. As we deal with the fiscal challenges associated with revenue limits and the limiting force of one-time sources, this SBR process will utilize the following principles. We'll engage in collaborative discussions with employee representation groups and other stakeholders, prioritize making adjustments away from the classroom by minimizing the instructional impact of cuts where possible, secure cost savings from vacant positions identified for repurposing or elimination, short-term and long-term savings through identification of efficiencies, and identify areas where budgetary realignment will strengthen our investment in district priorities, align with the strategic framework goals. This process will be part of the 23-24 budget development process for the district. Regular updates on plans developed in areas of realignment will be given during operations meetings in early 2023. And then Dr. Jenkins, did you want to take this part?
Dr. Jenkins stepped out.
Oh, no. Okay, so let's outline briefly then what's on the table tonight. Per the superintendent's recommendation, the following adjustments are a part of this recommendation. For the EA group, we would make a combined increase of an additional $3 an hour. Again, this is on top of the $2 previously authorized by the board. For the clerical unit, inclusive of 10-month, 12-month, clerical technical, and non-union clerical, $5 an hour increase. Food service, all food service assignments in Fund 50, except for management, $5 an hour. And security assistance, $5 an hour. And working with our payroll department, we could administer these changes as early as October 21st, 2022. This would give our staff time to update all salary records and tables included in this recommendation and would address all the aforementioned job groups. And I don't want to paraphrase the superintendent's words, but on here, I do want to state this recommendation is about more than what we do. It represents affirmative steps to reinforce the notion that being concerned about human decency is about who we are as Madison School District. Together, we can demonstrate the importance of our hourly employees in a manner which is fiscally responsible and in alignment with our core values.
Your recommendation?
Yes.
You stepped out?
Yes, I heard him.
So, Dr. Jenkins, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I think, first of all, Mr. McPherson, and I'd say with all confidence that we have someone who I have total confidence in the way that he helped us navigate through this with the rest of our team. Those words that he said at the end really belong to our board chair. And I thank her for those words during the most difficult times. She always talk about it's not just what we do, it's who we are. And when we think about as a district, where we're trying to go. We are trying to be that district. And we know the best way to serve our scholars is to invest in our staff. You all have been remarkable. So I'll never forget you, the conversation with Jamar. Other staff members as I've gone around, Rachel, never forget it. Judy, I never forget you. What you all do for our children on a daily basis, we as a district value. And I know sometimes it's not just in money, and I hope that this is not just about money. It's about us stepping up and saying, hey, we do value you. So this recommendation comes with a lot of sleepless nights, I'm gonna be honest with you, because we know our fiscal realities. We have a 0 and a 0 in a budget during a time of a pandemic. 0% and 0%. We know this. We know though, that this is not about an expense. This is more about an investment. And knowing that you would come, and you have come during the pandemic, over and over and over, working above and beyond. We realize that. This board, I thank you for even asking me to come back to recommendation, one that's representing humanity. And that's where we are right now. So with that, without any further ado, Mr. McPherson has made a proposal and read my recommendation, but we're here together. And I want to say thank you to all of you, not only for myself, the board to speak for themselves, but the board together. We stand tall with all of you to do the work for our children. So with that, I would say my recommendation is, as have been read, to make sure that we give the $5 to all of the groups that we've listed here. And we're going to be doing a salary compensation to look at our entire district as we move forward, because we have some large decisions to make. I hope you also heard that we're going to have to do some strategic budgetary realignment. There will have to be some structural changes. It's not easy work. And I want all of you to know that we can't stand together in private and then go fight in public. If you're going to stand together, you stand together all the time. It's not always going to be easy. I will tell you that. We have a fiscal cliff that will come unless we can come together and advocate like we should to our state legislators so that they can understand the importance of public education. We've had 14 years in a row of disinvesting in public education. Who are we? What are we? What are we going to stand for? So tonight, let's let this be the beginning of our advocacy together. So we'll do what we have to do in the best interest of our children. So having said that, thank you, Chair Muldrow and all the rest of the board members for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Dr. Carlton Jenkins. I move that the board adopt the recommended salary schedule for the groups identified, EAs, clerical, food services, and security assistants, to be adjusted to reflect a total increase of $5 an hour in accordance with the documents prepared for this meeting.
Second.
Because I think this is a really important discussion, I'm gonna open us up for discussion and make sure that we hear from each board member. I'm gonna start with Board Member Gomes-Schmidt and go around and end with Board Member Vandermeulen.
All right, thank you. I'm a little surprised by the motion. I was not aware that we were voting tonight, and so that's a bit of a surprise. I have a few questions. This is the first time in my memory that the MMSD board has received a recommendation to use fund balance for employee salaries that will be a recurring expense. And this is recognizing that the unprecedented situation we find ourselves in with inflation combined with staff shortages and large amounts of one-time funds. My first question is regarding the elimination of vacant positions being proposed to balance this use of fund balance. It uses fund balance and then focuses on a structural budget realignment, which you just told us about, that would be necessary and indicates eliminating 100 vacant positions for fiscal impact of $8 million. On Friday, I asked for a list of positions that are currently vacant or had been long time vacant that would be included in these cuts. And I guess my concern around this is that vacant positions in any given time are in flux. Depends on who retires, who leaves, what positions are difficult to fill. And sometimes positions are hard to fill based on qualifications and limited staff to fill them, and are not necessarily an indicator of what is needed to adequately and efficiently staff the district. And so I did make a list before the meeting of current job openings that we have posted. And just to name a few, they include the Director of Art Education, Custodial Supervisor, Food and Nutrition Lead Doc Worker, our DLI teacher leaders for middle school and elementary school, a Hmong teacher leader who writes curriculum for our Hmong DLI program, Human Resources Front Desk Employment Clerk and Benefits Help Desk Coordinator, and our Legal Office Public Records Clerk. And these are just a few that we're trying to recruit. And so I guess I'm wondering the process that we will take to basically figure out structurally which 100 positions will be eliminated in order to balance this going forward.
Board Member Gomez-Smith, I appreciate that question. And let me just say to the group and to you and to the rest of the board members, this isn't my first rodeo. I've had to do this before. I've eliminated $33 million. You can look it up, the Michigan superintendent there, in a much smaller budget. We had to come together just like this. And we had to sit down and look at one another honestly and say, where are the vacancies? Where will the attrition happen? Where have we underspent the budget? You go line item by line item, and we have to figure it out together as a team. When we think about the positions you've listed, there are many more positions than that. You know, this year we had a historical vacancy. And when you see those vacancies, why do we have those vacancies? And some of them beyond this year. Some of those vacancies have been there for 3 years. And there's repurposing. This is why we call it strategic budgetary realignment. The repurposing, there's some high level, perhaps administrative position, and there are some positions that are not administrative, that may be in other forms of operations. And we need to begin to look at, do we need to start repurposing? When we take this action, we call in the employee groups and we walk through it together. Now, yes, for the most part, there may be some philosophical differences. At the end of the day, you're gonna have to make some tough decisions. You don't make a decision like this unless you're willing to make it for the long haul. I look at the fund balance of what we have. We're above right now our current policy. I have been a superintendent that did not necessarily want to use the fund balance because it was articulated in the proposal. Here in Madison, we draw down cash about $50 million a year to continue with our business. And it increases our fiscal position, the fund balance, if we have it in the right position when we get our audits and it impacts our credit rating. So we want to be a district when catastrophic issues happen, we can be in a great position to take care of it. So when we go through this very methodically, we're gonna have to look at it as a team. We're coming out of a pandemic, but we're still in the pandemic. COVID is still here. We're talking about redoing education. How we invest in our dollars. We've gone through right now a number of line items where we've underspent, not just during the pandemic, prior to the pandemic. And we start looking at those deltas together. I mean, this is one of the biggest things the board do. The board really gets involved with the budget. So we get involved with it together, but we bring the voices to the table. How can we be a district understanding our means that we have? And how do we stay within our means that we have? That's just strategic budgetary realignment. So I'm saying to all of you up front, there will be some elimination of some positions. Understand that. You cannot do this and not do that. But some of those positions, it could be through attrition, and some of them, it could be through repurposing. Are we doing everything that we need to do right now? And that still is a question that's on the table. So I can't get to everything, but I know if we, given this through even just our fund balance, we have enough to make a one-time decision, give us a runway through this next budgetary cycle to come together and figure it out for the rest of the way. And I'm not depending on what we can get from the state because that's not guaranteed. I'm telling you all, I've been around a long time. I've never seen anyone come in and save us. We're gonna have to change the culture and save ourselves. Anything else is just a positive. I appreciate what the governor did, and I appreciate how he did it. He spread it over to 26. The one-time dollars that we received, that doesn't help stabilize the budget, you all. That just helps us for a moment. Okay, so that's what I would say to that, and I'll be more than happy. I would just love to work with you and everybody else to say, how are we gonna do this? It can't come from one person.
Yeah, I think that's really important to articulate going forward. My second question is around our enrollment, and knowing that last Friday was our third Friday count in enrollment, and we had predicted that there might be 150 student decline for this year. That was from our enrollment predictions from last November. Do we have an idea of where we're at? Did we go up? Did we go down? How are we looking for this year?
I'll ask our team to give us a more definite answer. We were looking at it, we're monitoring it daily. At this point, it appears at elementary that we've done better than what we were projecting. That's a good and a bad problem. And I'll explain that, and our CFO can probably explain that even better. It's really good long-term, really good where we are. And that's where you want to be. We are better than what we had projected in terms of that. Right now, we're still auditing those numbers. And individuals can say it's bad because you're not getting a decline in enrollment dollars. That's not a bad to me. That's a healthy sign. So it's a matter of perspective. And I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. But the work we're going to do to continue to build our district and what we're going to do together to make sure that everyone's knowing that every building you walk in is a thriving building, that's going to change our enrollment projections going in the future. So I'm looking forward to increased enrollment or stabilizing our enrollment as we do this work. Okay.
And this is my last comment, and I guess not necessarily a question with it, but as we were building our budget over these last 6 months, our assistant superintendent of finance has told us multiple times that even if we get $150 per pupil increase next year based on our declining enrollment from before and a number of other factors, it will only result in a $2 million increase to our net budget for next year, which is, again, goes back to the 0-0 increases and the position that we have been put in. But that means if that were to happen, and there aren't other things that happen along with it, is that we wouldn't even be able to fund steps and lanes for next year. And so I just want to not place any panic, but just to make us realize that however we strategically use the fund balance that we have affects what else we are able to use it for going forward. And so to me, that situation was already requiring a strategic alignment on our part. And so this sort of adds to it. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate the difficulty of the current situation. I truly do. We need to attract and retain hourly staff right now in order to run our district. I get it. But I just want everybody to recognize that there are some significant and real trade-offs that we're going to have to do. And I'm definitely a look before you leap type of person, and this feels more like leap and then look. So I'm interested to say what the rest of my board colleagues have to say. And I just want to say I appreciate the complexity of the situation.
No doubt. And let me tell you, I'm with you, look, before I leap. And sometimes a higher human condition requires us to take a calculated risk. And with the team that we have, I can say to you, I am very conservative as well. Sometimes I know it's an investment versus an expense. More than even recruiting people, we have to retain them. That's a better strategy than taking out and guessing if whoever I can recruit, can they give me the return on the community? That's
Exactly.
what I say.
It's both recruit and
It's both. It's a yes and it goes back to the 0-0, making a decision between what's right and what's right. That's what we're forced to do when we have the 0-0.
Thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you, Board Member Gomes-Schmidt. Board Member Nichols, and I'm sorry, when I said the order of everybody, I left Johanna off. So she'll go after Board Member Vandermeulen. Board Member Nichols.
Yeah, well, first, I just want to express gratitude. There you go. Anyway, I have gratitude. I have enthusiasm and excitement
Pass that along.
for this recommendation and proposal. Quite honestly, I've come into several of our meetings trying to do the math on a path for possibility, right? And that was in the absence of having kind of clear guidance or understanding of exactly where we might find additional possibilities, but I believed that there was a possibility. And so this recommendation exceeds my expectations in terms of where I thought we might be able to find dollars. And I'm really, really pleased with what is being presented. So I'm excited about that. I also hear Board Member Gomez Schmidt in terms of hard decisions that will come later. And I know that that is a reality that we will have to face, but I don't see that as a reason to deter this incredible investment that we can make. I do have a question, but Dr. Jenkins isn't in the room. So I'll just state the question, which is one of the employee groups not included are the custodial and maintenance staff. And so it'd be great to hear kind of the thinking around why the custodial or maintenance staff weren't included at this time.
I can come right in and answer that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Did you hear how deeply enthusiastic and how much gratitude I have for this recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I think you heard me earlier say we're gonna have to do a compensation study, right? And we do. Our custodians, first of all, are paid differently than our SEA, the other groups that we have out. And we're trying to see what can we do. The reality is that we can't do it all right now. This is a group we expanded from even the initial group, you remember?
Mhm.
And we did a lot of work. I want you all to know, we did a lot of work to get to where we were. The 1.4 million came because of an error that had been created by the state, and our CFO caught that and we brought that back in. So that's why we did the initial vote for $2.
Right.
You know, but the reality, we were scraping. We were adding milk in the eggs trying to feed everybody. For those of you who don't know what that means you know, you want to feed your whole family, put a little milk in the eggs. Now you can take 2 eggs and make it 4 eggs, okay? So, but the reality, we were just scraping, trying to get it. Then we said, no, we can try to go further. You asked if we could increase it some, board member Nichols. And we were looking, we were scraping, we were going. And then we got through the process, we started saying, okay, let's get this. And we were just dealing with this group. We were thinking about other groups. We know the reality. When you do something like this, you got to look out. Our real reality, have we invested enough in our community, in our staff, in the way that we need to really retain that level of staff? Where are we going in the future? What are we going to need? We're going to have a conversation in our community, again, about what we're really trying to do to be competitive, not just here in Dayton County, not just in the state. What we're going to do to be competitive nationally, internationally. That means you have to invest in your staff. So we're going to have to come back and look at that. But for now, short term, this is a short runway that we had to even deal with this group. When we do the longer plan, through the budgetary process, we can look out at things. We can't make promises about this at this point. We have to do a real study of where we are. And we still realize, and I want everybody to realize, in order to do this, that's another $7-8 million that we're talking about on top of already a $24 million. So when the CFO gave those numbers, about 100 cuts, that's real. I just want you to know that that's real now. So we're having to try to figure that out. And on top of what we're trying to do, we have to still be responsible. But then we are going to have a community conversation about what we want to have. I think at that point, we can address that and other things once we get the data back, suggesting what we need to do to create this path forward. But believe me, I'm a former custodian. So I know, okay, I feel that too. It's just a little bit smidget better right now, but they can hold on, everybody. We can get there with the data in our hand.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't want to be the board member that every time we get another opportunity to make a critical investment, I start asking for yet more again. So I just want to say, I want to come back to say, really grateful for the recommendation and the hard work to pull these numbers together and the employee groups that are included. And in light of all of the referendum updates that we've had, in light of all of the, the playgrounds, the facilities, and all of the work that has been done by custodial and maintenance staff, as I'm sure you already know, that's a really critical employee group for us to also be thinking of. So I know it's not in tonight's recommendation, but I just wanted to state that just because I know they're a really important group that makes our schools run. And I'm done.
Board Member Simkin.
Okay, got a list here. So first of all, I want to say that I really appreciate the movement to increase the salaries of those who are lowest paid in our district. I think that the people who are in a room for the most part are people who don't get lifted up often within the district. And that doesn't mean you're not doing critical work because the district can't run without you. And so I think this is really, really important. I have questions. I always have questions. So I'm gonna jump into them. So first of all, I'm wondering how specifically these four groups were chosen to be targeted in your proposal.
That's a great question. You know, when you look at the data for where we have vacancies right now, as well, and something we were thinking about is equity. We always talk about equity. We talk about humanity, right? When you start looking at who we added, look at the demographics, mostly female, right? A lot of people of color. I've been a custodian. I've been a food service person as well. And we know that the very people who work and serve our children, they barely afford to live in Madison. And they've been that way. And when I've gone out and I've talked to them doing the jobs, be it food service, be it the SEAs, and even this whole conversation, we're having it, right? Some of them are afraid that we're having this conversation because they don't want to get disappointed again. I asked some, what would this mean to you? Some in the second group, if you would say food service person. Oh, I don't believe it's gonna happen, first of all. Second of all, it would just change my whole life. I wouldn't have to work a second or a third job and then rush in here or rush out of here. You know, so we went out and actually started talking to the people and heard the people voices and said, okay, right now, the vacancies are here. We're trying to recruit people in, but we having people moving around in our district from food service to SEA to custodian. So some of those vacancies we have, they didn't all leave. They needed $1 more, $1.50 more. For some people, that's nothing. Common people like me, I would have taken a 50-cent raise. You know, so that's what it really came down to. The question, I think, came from both Board Member Nichols here and some conversation we had with Board Member Gomez-Smith about what about the next? We're thinking about that. But right now, this is what we have. This is the most critical need. Everybody's talking about the bad lunches. Well, if you don't have enough cafeteria people, because I've been a food service person, you shut down the production center. Now I have to change the lunches and I have to go with lunch B. What we've had to do is go with lunch C because you have so many people out. During the pandemic, we almost shut a school down because we didn't have enough cafeteria people. Okay, food service people are very important. Everybody's important. The custodians important. They're front line. I get it. But when we looked and analyzed it, we said we need to work on retaining these people right in this group first. right now, and then have a longer plan to do the rest of it though. And that was kind of how we came up with it. And if you look at where they are right now, the wages, the potential to keep them, and then we did some comparisons. I looked around what other people were paying their people. And Quick Trip now is up to $22, I think 23. Culver's at $19 an hour right now. Well, I shouldn't be telling them because they may be thinking about going to these other jobs. You know, let me stop that one.
So when you're talking about that, I guess what I'm wondering is, I agree that everybody who works in the district should be able to live in Madison and make enough money here to do so. Who are we leaving out though? I guess that's my question is, if we're targeting these 4 groups and we're paying and we're increasing it by $5 an hour, does that mean that other groups like the custodian and the maintenance group and the other groups that are now going to be the lowest wage folks in the district aren't going to be able to get a bump because we're bumping these 4 positions up so much?
Well, this is a larger discussion that must be held in our community. Because I'm not new to Madison, I'm back to Madison. I always say that. Madison's always been a city though of 2 tales. One for the flourishing group, right? And that group. And that group have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to live. Well, that group have children that attend our district. That group go places we go and take their money and put it back in the community. That group, a group of human beings. So we're gonna talk real, we have first-year teachers, second, third-year teachers that receive food stamps. We do. And they've gone to school, they have all this debt. We have custodians. We're gonna have to take a comprehensive look at what we need to do, back to what the board chair says, who we are.
So if we look at it right now, and we look at entry-level teacher salaries, and we look at who then, after this proposal, would then become the lowest wage earners in the district?
It just depends. That's complicated. I think what you're raising, Board Member Simkin, is real. And so we need to look at, that's why we do the compensation study. And then we start talking about where are we and what we need to do and how we bring the community in this conversation. It is so tough being out there recruiting our district. We're not there. Now we have benefits. Let's not forget that. We have some of the best benefits when you start looking at that comparative. But I just can't take my benefits and pay my rent. You know what I mean? It's a difference. So I applaud us. We're doing a great job with benefits. And it's the whole package. But when you're at a certain wage level, the benefits don't equate to improving my quality of life. Like when you're at a livable wage, then the benefits, now you feel pretty good about yourself. That's what I would say too. But the compensation study will draw into all of that and talk to us. And it won't be just somebody like me. We need to have our benefits specialists. We need to have other experts coming in and talk about it. We talk about it together.
So I appreciate everything that you just said. I would love to know that information now. I'd love to know how does this recalibrate everybody's salary?
Yes.
Where does this put security staff compared to entry-level teachers, compared to food service workers, compared to a group that I'm not thinking about right now? And I don't feel like I have that information.
Let me say to you, you're asking a great question. Every time you recalibrate it, we recalibrated in our district the last time in 2017. One group went above the other group. As we're trying to figure it out, because I'm again back to the 0%, it allows me to do less because I'm making a decision between what's right and what's right. Not what's right and what's wrong, right and right. That's our challenge. Our advocacy must be to position us better so we can be in a state that's no longer only Idaho and Indiana invest less than us when it comes to talking about our students who are receiving this, special needs services. Idaho and Indiana. Wisconsin has fallen out of the top half, the bottom half, when you start talking about investing in. See, this conversation isn't one just for this board. It's way bigger than this. It's about us being able to influence. When you get $5.6 billion, you don't know what to do with it, put it back in public education. You know, and so when the governor stepped up and did his plan, and just anyone who want to support public education, I'm so down with them. I really am. I'm with them. Let's go do it. But your question, I think we can answer that in a lot of ways. But for tonight's benefit, there will always be a group when you do salary compression. Even current employees, some are gonna go up more than others. Even in these groups we're talking about now, and I won't forget the presentation of one of the SEA said, you know, if we get this $2 raise at the time we were talking, it's almost like she gets 36 cents of the $2, you know, based upon where we are in the scale. So I can't promise everybody here we're gonna make everybody happy. I'm not gonna tell you that. I just think we'll be in a better position if we make this first move, come back and study it. And then we really need to think about what impact does this move have on our scholars, on our trip. Little Leonie right now, the work, she's done one of our top scholars, right? She didn't have her SEA with her, you know, her EA with her. She could not be as vibrant as she is. She's one of the top readers in her class too, right now. Assistive technology. The EA is doing work that I could not do, to be honest with you, you know? And so we have to think about what is the greater human condition, and it's not perfect. We don't have a perfect situation, but I do say to you, we've got to look at, we're Madison, we can do this. It's gonna be tough though. And so I say to even all the people in the room tonight, you know, when the work get tough, don't start high, because it's gonna get tough. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a situation of reculturing our district to show human decency.
So I absolutely believe that we can and that we should do this. I'm just looking for more information so that I feel like we fully understand the impact on our district of such a big financial decision. It's not that I'm saying it shouldn't happen, it's that I'm saying, well, how does this then impact all the other employee groups?
Great question too. I just want to tell you, but it's going to take us coming together, working through this.
My next question is on slide 8 that we had, and I'm sure Jesse, can you pull up slide 8? So much. There are 2 words in that slide that caught my attention, and I need to ask you about it. Prioritize adjustments away from the classroom by minimizing the instructional impact of cuts when possible. What does that mean? What's the when possible mean?
When possible. Our first priority is to stay as far away from the classroom as possible. But in the reality, you start talking about cutting $32 million, you don't know where you're gonna wind up in terms of if you have to do that. If you make that commitment, you're gonna try to do it. Last budget that I was involved in, we did 19.7% away from the classroom. Did 2.1, wind up doing 2.1, 2.3 towards the classroom. Okay, we have to make those adjustments. When we say line item by line item, we have to come in and say, where are our values? As much as possible, we have to do that, because the truth of the fact, you're still gonna want the lawn mowed, and you're gonna want the snow up, you're gonna want the meals to be served, we're gonna want everything to happen. That the services we're used to, we're gonna still want them. And we have to be concerned about all involved. And so when possible, we're gonna always stay away from the classroom. We have a lot of other areas. But the truth of the fact, 82 to 85% of any budget is about staffing. The largest percent of our staffing is where? So to get to that large percentage that I'm looking to get to, right now we are as a team, we know we're going to stay as far away as possible. But I can't sit here and guarantee you that I wouldn't be able to touch something else. You know, and that's a commitment we got to put on the table, or like I say, it's a larger community conversation.
So the way that I'm processing this is I am absolutely in favor of the reallocation of salary from those that are perhaps our highest wage earners to those who are our lowest wage earners. From pulling perhaps from admin positions into our classrooms. I'm really worried if any of this conversation ends up looking like we're going to adjust the number of children that are in classrooms to make that higher, or reduce the number of assistants or support people that are coming into classrooms. That when possible is just really making me a little nervous. And so I just needed to state that out loud, that as we move forward, I think that this is really what I want to do. I want us to have salaries that are just, we don't have so many people who are making six figures and then these folks on the bottom that have to work multiple positions. I don't think that that's the kind of society that we want to live in Madison. And that doesn't entail removing more of the lower income positions. I think that entails touching the higher income positions as much as possible and, you know, reallocating when we can, but not increasing the load on teachers or SEAs or folks that are working directly with children anyway. So I just wanted to say that out loud, and I will now pass it over to
Board Member Semke, the rest of the board member, I don't want to be disingenuous to tell you that you need talented people. When we talk about it has to be a balance. We have to recruit people and we have to retain people at a level. People go to school or whatever, and they want to matriculate through our system. So we can't keep that good talent. So it's a balancing act. This is why it's a larger conversation. But I do hear you when you're saying when possible. That's where our heart is too as well. Okay, for sure. And Mr. McPherson will take this call. I had another call before this meeting.
Board Member Castro?
Yeah, thank you. I'll be concise, don't have too many questions. I do support the recommendation here before us tonight. I also state support and understanding for our custodial staff as well. But I really want to underline the work before us, seeing that red number on this proposal. So we're going to have to engage in tough conversations in how we deliver services to Madison with the collapsing of 100 positions, and also I'll forecast it. I think we're gonna have to talk explicitly about a referendum next year. When we forecast inflation, the district funding formula from the state is not in line with our values for education here in Madison. So every day our educators go for broke. I think the board should go for broke and take this calculated risk here tonight and ask this city of Madison to go for broke. And that's what I gotta say.
Board Member Pearson?
Yeah, I'll keep my comments brief as well. But I do have one question at the end of everything I'll say. I just want to just express the gratitude for the staff and who have been coming out relentlessly for the past couple months, board meetings, coming into some of our work groups and just sitting there and sending us emails and calling us and things like that. I just want to just say, thank you for keep pushing us to be the best that we can be. And then also gratitude for the administration for coming to this recommendation. I wasn't sure what we would get on September 19th, but I am pleased to where we're getting at. I also want to give gratitude for my colleagues because I do think we have been trying to work on this for a pretty decent amount of time as well. As a person who has been raising 3 children, was raising children on like $12 an hour, $13 an hour as a full-time student, trying to live in Madison, like I understand how significant for some folks this increase can mean. I've lived it for many years and wasn't so far removed from it, just only maybe a few years ago. So I totally understand this. And for me, it's not falling on deaf ears at all. And as far as like the custodial staff and other groups that might not be part of this, it raises something for me, because I have family members and friends who are currently working in the district in those positions who are just like, hey, like what's happening? And having to respond to that. So for me, and my question is just around what is the timeline that we are looking at? Like I understand we have to do the analysis, we have to, balance things out. We are going to be going into a budget conversation soon and approving the budget and things like that. So things are going to have to happen pretty rapidly. We are trying to ensure folks get a raise if that's the road that we are going down before next year. So I guess that question could be either to Dr. Jenkins or to Ross.
Ross, I could start with it and if you want to go ahead, because at this point we've had some preliminary discussions, but it hasn't necessarily gone into projections. I was really focused on this particular recommendation, but I know that we're going to do the compensation study. And from that, we're looking to come back and have additional discussions about what we could do in various areas. But this is through a normal budgetary process, which is starting right in enrollment account now. And so we're saying this spring, let's have this discussion. It's also going to bring up a lot larger discussion. I could even say, we don't want to spend on credit cards. Paying bills on credit cards, we don't want to do that. So we're going to have to be responsible in what we're doing. And we can figure it out together, but it will cost. There will be an investment that we're going to have to make. That's what I would say. Ross, if you want to add to that.
Sure, and I appreciate the comment because it is true we're going into a unknown budgetary environment. We know that there have been requests made of the DPI and from the governor about what they'd like to see in the 23-25 budget. Obviously, there's a bunch of mitigating factors that will affect what budget we get. We know we have a gubernatorial election this year. We know that based on the last 6 or 7 budget cycles, biennial budget cycles in the state, that while we might get a proposal at the turn of the year in January, February, we have not been able to see action on many of those budgetary commitments until near the end of that fiscal year and the beginning of that new biennial period. This past year, we saw that we got information after July 1st. So we actually took action on a June preliminary vote before we knew what was going to happen for 21-22. And here we are again, hoping that something will change. Regardless of what we do see from the state, we will have to make some adjustments based on what we've been not only discussing here tonight, but just what Dr. Jenkins has already spoken to. There's not a heavy reliance right now on what the state could and would give us. So we need to start planning now based on our experience the last couple of years, and that will involve some heavy discussions regarding strategic budgetary realignment and what that looks like for us in the immediate future.
Okay, so just again, I just need some dates or not necessarily hard dates, but just conceptually what that might look like as we are going through this process, like months, like,
Sure. So we have the October budget finalization next month. I'm going to be working with the administration right away in November to start identifying some of these areas that we're previewing tonight, because when we come back from break. We need to start our budgetary process for 23-24 immediately. So that will be one of our first opportunities, as we said earlier in the presentation, will be operations work group in 2023. So we're going to start to outline a lot of these areas where we need to make some adjustments, because we have to do that because our workbook process starts up again that February again.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
Mhm.
And then I'll just make my last couple comments. I'm in agreement with what Savian just mentioned. I think, we have been trying really hard to deal with the cards that we've been given, and we want to make sure, and I think for the most part, from what I know is that, my colleagues and I, like, we definitely want to invest in people as much as possible. Like what was said at the beginning, like human decency is everything. And I think that is, again, a call on our city. Like our city, it's a call on our state, and we need further investments. And eventually what's going to happen is we may have to go to the referendum if that does get there. But I do think this is the right course, and I'm all in, and I 100% is supported. And at the end, I would like to request a roll call from every person. Let me vote. Yep.
Thanks, Board Member Pearson. So I'm gonna have more comments. I'm not gonna promise to keep them short. I want to start by saying the essential workers of this district are not going to go from being heroic one day to being underpaid and forgotten the next day. The last time we did this was in 2017, particularly talking about the EA unit. And one of the reasons I started this conversation specifically talking about SCAs and EAs is because our union came to us and advocated specifically for SCAs and EAs. In 2017, the question was, do you think EAs should be making $15 an hour? At the time, the fight for 15 was a nationalized conversation, and the fight for 15 was about a $15 minimum wage. So when you really think about it, the question was, should EAs and SCAs be making minimum wage? I think when you frame the fight for 15 and the last time we did this in 2017 in that way, it shows you how that group specifically has been underpaid. And even with this increase of $5, I said a couple weeks ago, I don't think anybody working for our district should be making less than $21 an hour. The EA folks and food service folks would start at about $21.44 with this increase. Our clerical staff would start at about 22.42, and our security staff would start at 24.17 an hour. We did this in 2019 for our security staff, recognizing the importance and value of their labor. And I think there is a conversation about the value of the work people do that is often missing from the conversation about wages. So when we're talking about how much do we value people's work, I've thought about it a lot. How often is it that we get to be as passionate about paying people more as we are asking people to do more? One of the reasons I struggle with voting this evening is because I wanted to vote at the regular meeting. I think it's really important that we hear from the community in terms of this vote. The implications of this vote are large and long lasting, and people have the right to weigh in. The other reason I think it's complicated to vote this evening is because I think we need to understand how competitive our wages are in comparison to the rest of our community. I think one of the things we wanted to accomplish in this increase was being able to say that MMSD pays better than anybody else in Dane County, to make us the obvious choice of employer, both because of our commitment to compensation and our commitment to healthcare. My questions are pretty simple at this time. So looking at kind of how we would do this year and what it would look like to do this next year and moving forward. So Ross, I'm curious, if we make the cut of 100 positions, does that mean we move away from using fund balance to support this change, and this change becomes self-sustaining in our next budget once those cuts are made?
So the goal of the strategic budgetary realignment steps that we're outlining right now would be definitely an attempt to operationalize the changes we're making now. So we would have to make some adjustments to our current cost structure to make up for the red number many board members have referenced tonight. On top of that, we know that we have regular increases that we have discussed and negotiated with employee units over the course of the last several years, especially in regards to step increases and where CPI is headed currently. So all of those things are going to need to be part of the delta on what we need to accomplish through strategic budget realignment. That number, depending on how high we are going for future years, on top of any other inflationary adjustment for contractual services or other areas of the budget that need attention, are all going to be on the table for that budgetary realignment discussion.
Thank you so much for speaking to that, Ross. Ross, can you speak to the percentage of fund balance we're going to be using this year to get to $5 for each of the named units?
Sure. So right now, our budget for 22-23 is just over $500 million. The information supplied for the meeting indicates that we have a structural goal of $7 million to address with this proposal. So that would be just over 1%.
So just over 1% of our fund balance will be used?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many percentage points over the board policy is our current fund balance? Is our fund balance about 2% over our policy or 3%? What gets us back within policy?
So we're still finalizing the final report right now with our auditors, but I can tell you at least anecdotally, we are about 3 to 4 percentage points above our current threshold of 15%.
Okay. And then Ross, I think this is my last question at this time, but I want to lift the voices of custodial staff who reached out to us today. There is a sense that in order to get custodial staff to above 21 an hour, you need a lesser investment. That custodial staff are already positioned significantly higher than some of the other groups we're talking today when you're talking about their starting or base wage. Can you address a little bit about kind of the difference? And then I guess I have some really specific questions about kind of the hourly wage of custodial staff, because their labor is pretty different than other groups.
I can speak to it to a degree. I do want to highlight, though, that as we're talking about the hourly rate tables for these groups, they are not easy to compare because they have different grading criteria and different longevity criteria associated with them. So the custodial unit, if you look on our website, there's about 16 different grades associated with the custodial unit, all the way from trainee to lead custodian or custodial worker 3. The starting ranges for those groups, even after the 3% vote we took in June, range from 1833 to 2676. I do want to highlight, though, that at that lowest end, you're talking about the initial trainee during probationary periods. And after taking placement in a school, they will be right on par with some of the ranges you just mentioned, Board Chair.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. Our custodial staff work 24 hours a day. Is that correct? They work 3 shifts?
There are, I may need some help with this one. My understanding is there's 2 shifts, day and night, but depending on the building, that shift change might be a little bit different.
Looking around the room and I feel like there's some folks who know. Great, thank you. Hand signals over here. So 3 shifts. Is there a nighttime differential for our custodial staff? What is our nighttime differential?
Oh man, depending on the shift, I believe it's 1.25 to 1.5.
25 cents.
Thank you.
All right. So taking into consideration kind of the factors that impact that group specifically, I was given a figure earlier today. I got a lot of phone calls today, and I took as many as I could. Then I had to teach, and so if I missed you, I will listen to your message. I promise. But one of the figures I was given today is that an investment of an additional $2 million is all we would need to increase custodial staff to get them to a comparable space in terms of starting wage. Does that figure, I know I'm asking you to do math on the spot, Ross, does that figure sound correct to you?
I would need to proof that. I'm not going to be able to do that quickly, but to make a similar increase that we're discussing tonight, it would be much more than 2 million from my estimation.
Okay.
So I would need to verify that and review that question further.
So I think that information, whether, I don't think we're positioned to vote on that or make any decisions about that, but I think having the information around that, especially as we look to plan for the future, would be incredibly helpful. Dr. Jenkins, I want to thank you for all the work you've done to get us to this place. When I said a couple weeks ago that I didn't think anybody should work for us and make less than $21 an hour, I thought that I was talking about kind of a 3-year process of getting all of our hourly wage folks to this space. And we've been able to do a lot more than I thought we would do. But I do want to emphasize that one of the reasons we started with SEAs and EAs is that group has the largest numbers of vacancies of any group. And I think the importance of that work is not something that we can shy away from talking about as we have this conversation. So I want to thank you all for the work that you've done. I know that we have a lot more to do, but I am really proud of the moment that we are having right now and the conversation we're having. I hope we get to continue this conversation, and it's my preference that we delay our vote to the regular meeting and give people the chance to participate in public comment. But I am one board member, and as chair, I respect the voices of all of you, and hopefully we can decide together whether or not we are ready to move tonight. And if so, what that means. Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yes, I want to thank everyone who came here tonight, paying an honest wage, and I'm going to look directly at people. So please don't think I'm turning my back to the board. I am not. Very simply, paying an honest wage is the most important duty we have on this board for our staff, whether they be teachers, SEAs, janitors, food service, security assistants, it does not matter. We pay what people are worth. We have an opportunity tonight to fix a situation on 4 groups and make sure that we can take one within a compensation study so that custodians will eventually be included. Not eventually as in 10 years from now, not 2 years from now. I'm not going to forget you. I haven't before. I meant that, and I meant what I said. I can't run a school without them, and I sure the heck couldn't do the job if I wanted to. In fact, I'm the one who forgot every book and had every janitor letting me in after hours. And frankly, that's the truth. There's a reason I wear my keys, because I lost them 37 times. Without janitors, I wouldn't have had a prayer to get where I'm at. But what the truth is this. I don't want to split hairs. I think we need to vote tonight. We have people who have been working and depending their paychecks on this, their lives on this, and their jobs on this. This is a time where we can say we are doing the right thing. And I'm going to take my mask off just so that I want the deaf to be able to also see this. I want many things, but what I need is food service who can feed our students. I want EAs and SEAs who are able and not exhausted to care for our children. I want security assistants who are able to protect our schools now that we have made the decision to remove the police. And I want the ability for our custodians to be added in the near future. But this vote needs to happen tonight because there's a way to talk something to death. And we need to make a decision. I asked Dr. Jenkins that I needed a plan by the 19th. And I said I trusted him. Got to understand, for someone like me, trust isn't something that comes easy. It doesn't come very easy at all. I'm used to being disappointed and I'm used to being let down. I appreciate that didn't happen. So therefore, I'm voting yes on this, but that does not mean I've forgotten my custodial brothers and sisters. As for food service, I worked food service for 1 semester and managed to break the entire dish room machine at Liz Waters. I apologize. I don't know how much that cost, but you get my point. I've done it. I understand. And I haven't lived it. You have, and you deserve that respect. And the most respectful thing we could do tonight is to vote yes and host this vote tonight. The information is clear. Our staff is worth it.
Johanna?
Oh yeah, thank you. So I just also like to reiterate what board members before me have said, is that I really want to express my gratitude to Dr. Jenkins for coming up with this, spending time and his team spending time on coming up with, how the budget will work and a presentation to show us how all of this would work, and putting so much effort into this. I do believe that all of our staff do deserve this $5 increase. Kids at school should not be having bags of corn because there's no staff to work in the food services. Pizza every single day, that's not okay. So they definitely need that $5 increase. They've worked through the pandemic. COVID is still a thing, and they're working hard through that. Inflation. I just really do believe that they do deserve this $5 increase, and we can figure out the rest later, but I really want to have this increase. So thank you.
Chair Muldrow, I would call for a vote on this.
So Board Member Vandermeulen calls the question. Board Member Pearson asks for a roll call vote. Further discussion? Board Member Nichols?
Aye.
Board Member Simkin?
Aye.
Board Member Castro?
Aye.
Board Member Pearson?
Aye.
Board Member Vandermeulen?
Aye.
Board Member Gomez Schmidt?
Aye.
Board Member Muldrow? Aye. Johanna, your advisory vote? My bad.
Yes, yes, definitely.
All right. Motion carries. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Johanna, your advisory vote.
Yes.
Moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Commissioner Perkins,